Good morning, everyone. Good morning, students. Today, in machine learning, we are going to see one of the types of machine learning, which is called unsupervised learning. In previous three lectures, we have already seen about the introduction of machine learning, that exactly what machine learning implies, and why artificial intelligence systems need to have this machine learning algorithms in it, why it is required for the artificial intelligence system to have machine learning algorithms running into it. And after that, we have seen that in machine learning, basically, it is not just a consolidated part. It has been always divided into four categories of learning, where we have seen four types of machine learning. Like one was supervised learning. We have seen in lecture number 3 that what exactly is supervised learning. Then we have seen unsupervised learning, and then we have seen semi-supervised learning, and finally the reinforcement learning. So all these four are the categories of machine learning that we have seen previously. uh, Now, from third lecture onwards, we are going and learning about each and every type of learning into the depth. So, in third lecture, I have already told you, I have already explained what is supervised learning with the help of some examples and some famous algorithms which are employed for supervised learning algorithm. Now, today in this lecture number 4, I'm just going to explain you what exactly is unsupervised learning. And basically, this unsupervised learning takes use of, and with the help of some of the algorithms, you can implement unsupervised learning algorithms according to various scenarios on the basis of some conditions. Like, depending on the conditions, if you are applying unsupervised learning algorithm, then which one of the algorithm is suitable for unsupervised learning that we have seen. So let us go through it, unsupervised learning, and let us just see some of the basic and some of the very important algorithms that are applied in unsupervised learning algorithms. So let us just begin with this. So let us quickly, let me tell you what is unsupervised learning. As I told you in lecture 2, that unsupervised learning is basically that kind of learning where your machine doesn't know anything about the labels. As I told you, what is a label? Label is basically the category or the class in which you are dividing the objects. Like, see, suppose I am training my machine on, let's say, red color and yellow color. Let's say these are the only two labels. These are the classes, the labels that I am using to train my machine, that some objects are of red color and some objects are of yellow color. Okay, so these are the two defined labels that I already know. Okay, now on the basis of this, I have trained my machine. Like, I have given some of the inputs to my machine. Like, I've given apple and I've said ki, you have to always recognize an apple to be of red color. Like, I've told my machine, I've trained my machine that whenever I give an object like lemon, you should always, recognize it as in yellow color. Similarly, if I give a banana, then you should always categorize it into a yellow color. I'll ask you about blood, it you should always recognize or categorize it into red color. So this is the thing, these are the things that I have trained my machine on. So the type of learning where you are specifying the labels, where you are already defining the labels to your machine, you are explaining it that only these two are the labels in which you have to define the object. Every object which you are getting in the input, it should either be of class 1 or class 2. There is no other third class. So in that case, you are implementing actually supervised learning. Now, when we talk about unsupervised learning, obviously your machine is trained and your machine is going to recognize your object, but here the labels are not defined. In this case, I'm not going to tell my machine, I'm not going to train my machine over the labels, like that when I give you an apple, you will always have to define it into red color, or I'll give you a mango, then you have to always recognize it as a yellow color. No, in unsupervised learning, we just let the machine recognize the thing on the basis of the training we have done. Like, it will have lot many data. On the basis of that data, it is going to group together the class. Like, it is not going to label the things. Like, suppose I am just giving frequent objects. Randomly, I'm giving my machine the objects, right? On the basis of the features of those objects, machine what the machine will do? Machine will extract the features of each and every object. Now, on the basis of those extracted feature, my machine is going to group the objects according to the similarities seen. So once all the groups are formed, then only it can give a class. Like some of them are expliciting some kind of a color, which are red in color. So yes, then only my machine can classify it as that. Yes, all these objects have they are reflecting some kind of a similar property, that is they are reddish in nature. So I can give a class that yes, they are red in color. So already the labels are not known to me, but yes, on the basis of extracted feature, my machine is able to identify the things, or it is able to group the things. So this is basically unsupervised learning, where there is no one for supervision, there is no one for the guidance of my machine. My machine is the only one which is going to extract the features from the object, and then only it will conclude on the basis of groupings that this particular group is reflecting such kind of properties, and that particular group is reflecting that kind of properties. So this is the concept which is used by unsupervised learning. So let us just go through it. This is the roadmap. Let me completely tell you that I'm not going to cover all the topics today only. It will be, concluded. It would be taken up, continued in the next lecture also. So today we are only going to understand till the representation of clusters. The second point that you can see here, after k-means algorithm, representation of clusters we are going to see. The next set of learning, that is hierarchical clustering algorithms, we are going to cover it in tomorrow's lecture. In the next lecture, we are going to cover it. Okay. So let us just understand what is the representation of till representation of clusters. So on the basis of the concept that I have told you about unsupervised learning, uh, now we'll just understand that what exactly is unsupervised learning on the basis of one of the popular algorithm. It is very very famous algorithm which is used, and it is very common one because of the efficiency it gives. It is very a very common algorithm which is used for unsupervised learning, which is called k-means algorithm. You might have heard this word whenever you are implementing some ML algorithms. In that case, you might have heard this word very commonly. So let us just quickly understand what k-means algorithm is. Okay. So as I already told you, this is just a definition which is defining that what supervised learning is and what unsupervised learning is. You can see from here the definition as I've already explained it to you, but you can go through the point that is written that says that the supervised learning discovers the pattern in the data that relate data attributes with a target class. See, again, the target class is used. Target means the label. We already know the label, and the data that we are getting, we need to discover the patterns in that so that we can classify them into a particular target. We classify them into a particular class that we already know. So that is supervised learning, right? Similarly, when we talk about unsupervised learning, the data have no target attribute. Just notice this line, just observe this line. It is saying you don't have any target attribute. That means you don't have any predefined labels. You don't know about the labels. On the basis of the feature extraction, you are going to classify them into a particular category. So this is what I have explained to you, and this is written over here. You can see it for your confirmation. Okay. Now, okay, so now, as I told you, we are seeing unsupervised learning, and in unsupervised learning, there is a major concept on the basis of unsupervised learning. A concept comes which is called clustering, and it is very, very, a very popular term which is used in data mining and in machine learning as well. In data science, also, you might have heard this word clustering. It is a common technical buzz which is used nowadays. So this, let me tell you, this clustering is actually based on unsupervised learning algorithms. It is not a supervised learning algorithm. It is unsupervised learning algorithm, right? So let us understand what clustering is. So see, the clustering, basically, if we define it in a technical manner, it is just a technique for finding similarity groups in data called clusters. So as I told you, See, when you are using unsupervised learning algorithm in your machine, I told you, we are assuming that your machine doesn't know about the predefined labels. There is no predefined label on which your machine has been trained. So definitely what your machine is going to do is, as I told you, the data that you are going to provide your machine in terms of input, it is going to extract the features from that input, and on the basis of those extracted features, it is going to group them. Like, for example, if I say, let's say I'm a very new teacher to your class is of 60 strength. Let's say there is a 60 students in your class, and I'm very new to you. This is my first class in your lecture hall. So I don't know about any student, whether somebody is a topper of the class, whether he or she is an average student, whether he or she is below average students. So how am I going to, identify? Because there is no label actually. I don't know about anybody. So what I'm going to do, let's say I've taken one test, a general test. I have taken a very general knowledge test. I have taken, and when I'm going to assess your test, when I'm going to assess the test of those 60 students on the basis of that test, whatever marks you have gained, on the basis of that gained marks, those gained marks, what I'm going to do is I am going to group the students. Like very many of the students will be there who have got 90%, above 90%. So I'm just what I'm going to do is I'm just putting them in a separate group. Then those students who have got 60 to 80% marks, I'm going to cover them up. I'm going to like group them up in a separate group, and below 60 there is a different cluster, and I'm going to group them up in a different kind of a cluster. So here, what I have done is I didn't know about anything about your class, but what I did is I have taken one assessment. I have, I have used one parameter. I've used one, methodology on the basis of which I extracted your feature. I used to, assess all of you, and I have, on the basis of the things that you have done, the assessment that you have done, I have grouped all the students into three different categories. And now, on the basis of the features that you have reflected, I can now cluster all of you. How can I cluster? That these are below average students, these are average students, and they are above average students. These are topper ones. So this is what unsupervised learning is doing. It doesn't know anything about the data, but on the basis of feature extraction, on the basis of attributes that it finds inside the data, it is going to group them up, which we call clusters. That group which reflect similar kind of properties is called a cluster. So it is going to make the clusters, and on the basis of those clusters, it can identify them or label them according to the designer, right? So this is the thing. As you can see, even it is written in the definition that it groups data instances that are similar to or near about similar to each other in one cluster, and data instances that are very different from each other into different clusters. So this is first thing that we have seen about clustering. Now, clustering is often called an unsupervised learning task. I already told you about this, that clustering is nothing but unsupervised learning example, because it doesn't use predefined labels. Okay, so even this is written, you can see the second point, it is written that it is called unsupervised learning. Why? Because it has not got any class values which is denoting on a priori. Priori means in advance, you don't know anything. Grouping of data instances are given, which is in the case of supervised learning. So in supervised learning, in advance, your machine is knowing the labels, but in unsupervised learning scenario, your machine doesn't know anything about the data, right? Now, due to historical reasons, clustering is often considered synonymous with unsupervised learning. This is, as a matter of fact, I have told you that if you are using the word clustering, it is but obvious that you are saying that you are using unsupervised learning, or if you are saying that you are using unsupervised learning, clustering is nothing different from it. Okay. Now, let us move to another part. Let's say this is just an illustration of the clustering part. The data set has three natural groups of data points, that is three natural clusters. You can see the three natural clusters. See here, this is one cluster, this is second cluster, and this is third cluster. So how we have made clusters? All these points that you are seeing, all these data that you are seeing in one cluster, they are reflecting some kind of similar properties. That is why we have made a group of them. Similarly, you can see here, they are nearby points, they are making a group together. So that simply means that some way or the other they are representing some kind of similar type of properties. And even in the third cluster that you are seeing here, they are representing some kind of similar properties. So this is the output of machine learning when you are implementing some clustering algorithms over it, or some unsupervised learning algorithms over it. Now, quickly see, first of all, why should we use clustering for? Why it is the need of clustering? So let us see some real-time examples. Example number one says, groups people of similar sizes together to make small, medium, and large t-shirts. Okay, tailor-made for each person. It is too expensive. One size fits all does not fit at all. Okay, now see, what is the example saying here is, see, let us take an example that you are into a business of making t-shirts. So there is one easy way of producing the t-shirts, is that maybe you can, what you can do is, one thing is tailor made for each person. That means whichever customer is coming to your let's say to your showroom, you are making a t-shirt specifically for that person. When he enters, he selects the cloth, he selects the material of the cloth, and you are making each for all of them. So this would be too expensive. You are consuming, you are spending your too much time on that person, and according to his choice you are making, it will take too much time. And let us assume that there are 100 customers. So for 100 customer, you are going to waste your time on selection of his material. Then you are tailor making specifically for a particular, you are customizing the t-shirts. Now it will take too much of your energy, too much of your time, too much of your money. So this is not done at all. Similarly, let's talk about the different option. The second option, the different option could be that you are making a universal size that will fit for all. So even if you take this option, that will not be suitable, because there are some people who wants to wear completely fit shirts. So that is not an option. You cannot go for one size for all. So even that could not be done. So in that case, here comes the use of clustering, where what you can do is you can cluster your t-shirts into three different categories or four different categories. Let's say here it is only three. We can have different categories, and you might have seen in your very many online shopping categories like double XL, XL, small, extra small. So there are different categories in which you can divide your t-shirts. Like you will make only three types of shirts, which can be small, medium, and large. So here the clusterings can happen. So obviously, any person or any customer that you have, it will be definitely, he will be definitely lying under either small category or medium category or large category. So it will make the business simple. This is one example. Second example could be in marketing, segment customers according to their similarities. Obviously, when you are targeting, when you are marketing, you need to have a targeted marketing. Now how can you do that? Let's say target marketing can be like, suppose in credit card business, what happens is, you have made different type of card categories, like silver category for people who are earning, let's say, 2 lakh per year. And for people who are earning 5 lakh or more, you are providing them with a gold card that will have more features. And for the people who are having more than 10 lakh, you are offering them some platinum cards. So this is the category, these are the clusters that you make. And whenever the data comes to you, let's say you have a data of 50 persons about their annual packages. On the basis of those annual packages, you don't know about the category beforehand, but once you get the data about their salaries, about their annual packages, on the basis of those annual packages, you can bifurcate them on the basis of the cards. Let's say that one person is having salary of 1.5 lakhs per year. So in that case, you will offer them silver category. You will be clustering them in silver category. Then the one who's getting 6 lakhs per annum, you are going to classify them or cluster them in a separate group, which is of gold category. So this is how you can cluster them up in target marketing. Okay. Now comes the third example which says that given a collection of text documents, we want to organize them according to their content similarities. Now, how can we do that? Let's say it has a long history and it's used in almost every field like medicine, psychology, botany, sociology, biology. So, on the basis of these contents, like computers is a different subject. If you find contents of computers like so networking, cloud computing, Android, Java, C, you'll cluster them in computers because it is related to all computers. Secondly, if you talk about machines, lathe machines, and some kind of mechanisms that we use, engines. So these are some of the words which are related to mechanical engineering. So you are going to cluster them up in mechanical engineering. So in such kind of cases also you can cluster your data into different categories. So this is the use where you can use clustering. And let me tell you, what I personally think is, in comparison to supervised learning algorithms, unsupervised learning algorithms are, more efficient as they are, matching, they are suiting for the current scenario. In current scenario, unsupervised learning algorithms are the ones which are more suitable according to the conditions as compared to supervised, because in supervised learning algorithm you have to train your machines on the basis of the labels. You are going to provide the labels, you are going to provide the data, and then only your machine is able to testify and recognize the things. Whereas in clustering part, it is all random. The data you are giving is random. The similarities that your machine is going to extract is random. The grouping is random. You don't have to, invest much of your time and energy in this. So I think clustering is more suitable in today's world. Not even clustering, unsupervised learning is more suitable in today's scenarios wherever you are going, whether it is a education field or you talk about marketing field, it is business, or if it is some kind of organization part. So this is the category that we can use for, right? So here you can see there are some aspects of clustering. What are they? Let us understand. Clustering algorithm can be partial clustering. They can be hierarchical clustering. We'll see what are they. Now, second aspect of clustering is the distance similarity or dissimilarity function. Dissimilarity or similarity function says that when you are making a cluster of objects, that cluster means that all the data or the members inside that cluster should have minimum distance with each other, right? And if any data is having too much distance, is having let's say a very large distance from one data to another, then I cannot say that they are similar ones. If they are not, they are not reflecting similar kind of property, they'll have a huge difference into them. They'll have a huge distance. So on the basis of these distance, if the distance is less, we'll say that they belong to a same cluster. If the distance is too high, we say that they don't belong to a similar cluster. So we can, identify the objects on the basis of these distances. Then, when we talk about clustering quality, what does that mean? Now, inter-cluster distance is maximized and intra-cluster distance is minimized. Quality means, see, two clusters, two different group of objects can only be identified crystal clearly only when the distance between the two clusters will be very far. You see, one clusters can be clearly seen existing in comparison to the other clusters. So it is always required that your machine, when your machine is going to, cluster the things, the intercluster distance. Intercluster means the distance between the two different clusters should be as much as possible so that you can clearly identify this is different cluster and that is different cluster. So that should always be maximum, that should be too large. But when you talk about intra-cluster distance, intra-cluster means the distance between the object inside a single cluster. Like I have made one group, and in one group, all the data which is there, all the objects which are there, they should have very minimum distance so that they, they should reflect a similar property. So these are the two things which are required for clustering quality. So if you want your cluster to be highly, of higher quality, then your inter-cluster distance should be maximized and your intra-cluster distance should be minimized. So the quality of the clustering result depends on the algorithm, the distance function, and the scenario on which you are applying. Obviously, even this is very important that you should select your clustering algorithm or your unsupervised learning algorithm according to the scenario the basis of the scenario, you should decide that which kind of clustering algorithm you want to apply over it, because there are a lot many clustering algorithms, and all the clustering algorithms are not suitable for all the scenarios. So you just have to select which clustering algorithm you want to apply on, right? So gradually we are going to see what all are the different algorithms and what are the suitable conditions in which you can apply that particular algorithm. So let us just continue to see this. Now, in the next concept, we are going to see the K-means algorithm that I was talking about. It is a very popular algorithm of clustering, or say the unsupervised learning algorithm. So let us just quickly see what is K-means algorithm. So K-means algorithm, or say K-means clustering, what is it? Basically, K-means is a partial clustering algorithm. Now, let the set of data points means the instances, the objects, or the data that we are taking, D, we are calling it D, okay? Let it be x1, x2, until n. We have total n number of data points, where xi is what? It is actually a vector of real valued spaces. This shows it is belonging to real type class, है ना? And R is the number of attributes. What is R? R is the total number of features of that data. Let's say, like if I'm talking about an apple, apple can have a set of attributes, like it is red in color, it is a fruit, it is juicy in nature, it has got a round shape. So these are some of the attributes, the dimensions of your data. Then the K-means algorithm partitions the given data into K clusters. What does it do? Here the K word, you are seeing the K alphabet. K means, by this K, what do we mean? That in this particular algorithm, we make total K number of clusters. Like if I say 4, 4 cluster algorithm means I am going to, cover up my data. I'm going to divide my whole data into only 4 clusters. So K means the total number of clusters that you are going to make. Now, the most important part here is to understand that every cluster has a cluster center. For every group of objects, you are making, or you are assuming, a center which is called centroid. Okay. Now, second, why this centroid is important, I'm going to tell you. I have already told you about the distance factor, no? So the interquality, the intercluster distance, the intra-cluster distance, all this is measured using centroid. I'm going to tell you later. But here you understand that centroid is one of the important part, and we always need to find the centroid of each and every cluster. Next is K is specified by the user. Now the number of clusters is always based, and it is always dependent on the user. If I am the user, if I am applying K-means clustering algorithm on a particular data, it is only me. I am the only one who is responsible for deciding that how many clusters I want to have to identify all the objects, or to bifurcate all the objects into various groups. So it is all about the user who is going to decide that how many clusters he or she wants to have in his implementation, right? Then now understand the algorithm. It is just the algorithm. So here it is said that given K, the number is already known to you. The number is known, like let's assume that I am taking only 4 clusters. So the K-means algorithm works as follows. How does it work? Number one, the step number one says you have to randomly choose K data points to be the initial centroized cluster centers. Okay. What I have to do is, because I have chosen K different clusters, here I'm taking K to be 4. So, okay. So what I want is, I am going to divide my complete data into 4 different groups. So here K is equals to 4. I am making 4 different groups. So first of all, what I need to do is I have to randomly choose 4 different data points. What are these data points? They are not data exactly. They are the cluster centers. They are the centroids. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, once I have identified 4 different centers at a very large distances, as I already told you, the quality will come when your different clusters will be at too much distance away. So I need to point out 4 different clusters at usually a very large distance, and then what I will do is assign each data point to the closest centroid. So once I have selected 4 different clusters, 4 different seeds, okay, 4 different centroids of the clusters. Now I'll allow the data to come inside. I'll allow my data to be inputted. And once the data will start coming on the basis of the attributes, what I will do is whichever data is nearest to a particular centroid, nearest to a particular point, I'm going to cluster them, I'm going to group them up into a particular group. So that is what you are doing. You are assigning each data, each input to the closest centroid, right? Now what I have to do, I need to recompute the centroids using the current cluster membership. Again, on the basis of the centroids, again on the basis of the clusters that I have made, I need to again compute the centroids of all these data. Maybe there could be a case where, I have wrongly or misinterpretedly, I have taken one data into another centroid and it belonged to other centroid. So I can recompute it as and when I want. And if a convergence criterion is not met, go to 2. As I already told you, let that there could be a there could be a misunderstanding that we have taken up object into a different cluster, and it is it is having closeness to another centroid. So what I need to do is I need to assign that data point to the other centroid. That is point number 2. I need to assign each data point to the closest centroid. So there could be a part. That is why I need recomputation. Recomputation, what it will do is it will always rectify and refine your results. So it is an important part. Recomputation is always required to refine the results, whatever you have got. Fine. So this is the algorithm. Now you can see it in a pseudocode manner. Just see, algorithm is k means, where k is what? K is the total number of clusters that you are making, and d is the data point, right? Now, step number 1 says you need to choose k data points as the initial centroid. Initially, you need to point out the centroids. Then what you have to repeat is, for every data point which is belonging to the data set, capital D, you need to compute the distance from X to each centroid. From every centroid, you are going to measure the distance of that point. And whichever distance is less, you are going to assign that X to that centroid. Okay. And again, after doing all these things, you need to recompute the centroids using the current cluster membership until all are refined. So this is the algorithm of k-means clustering algorithm. We have seen this, and this is just the pseudocode of the previous steps that I have already told you. So I think it is very simple. There is no complexity in this algorithm. Very simply and sweetly, all the steps are written over here. You can easily understand what it is written here. Okay. These are some of the criteria of stopping the process, because at some point of time we need to terminate the procedure. For how long we are going to cluster the things. So this is one point where we need to stop the process to occur. So when we can do that, no reassignments of data points to different cluster. We can stop our procedure when you find that even after recomputation, you are not finding any data which is suitable for other clusters. So if you don't need to have transferring of data according to the recomputation of centroid, then you can terminate the things, because no improvisation is happening. It is all the time. Whenever you are recomputing the things, it is always, the result is always static one. It is always the same. It is fixed. It is not changing anytime. It is not dynamic. So in that case, you can any time you can terminate the things. Then if there is no change of centroids, if the centroids are not changing on the recomputation, even then you can do so. Then the third criteria could be minimum decrease in the sum of squared errors. If the error means the expected one and the exact error which is coming, if that distance is already decreased, has reached to a minimum point, then only you can stop the whole process. So these are the 3 important criteria which signifies the end of the process, where you can terminate your process. So these are the things which you can use whenever you want. Okay. See, this is the example. Here you can see random selection of k centers. We have taken k centers, random selection. This is one cluster and this is second cluster. Now see, again, what I'm doing is I'm recomputing, I'm iterating. So on the basis of this iteration, just see here, you can see this is the center and this is the center. Just see. However, what I think personally, if you can see here, you can observe you can see that this whole thing should be in one cluster and this whole thing should be in just one cluster. So recomputation always tells you about such kind of situation. Now see what is happening here. What I have done is I have recomputed the centroids. This is the center. Earlier it was this center, now it is this center. Even in this cluster, this is the center. And now after recomputation, this has become the new center. Okay, so this is how you are computing the centroids again and again after each and every iteration. Now see, iteration 2, after doing iteration 2, this is the cluster that we have found. Again, recomputing the centroids. Now, this is just the refinement. Every time you are iterating, you are refining the centroids. And once this gets static, this gets fixed, there's no change in every iteration, then only you can terminate the things. Okay. Now, let's see. This is k-means, but there can be a disk version. What is the disk version? In it can be implemented with the data on the disk. Data on the disk means when your data is already stored on the secondary memory, then also you can apply k-means algorithm. So in that, what we are going to do is in every iteration we scan the data only once. We are going to just scan the data just once, and as the centroids can be computed incrementally, data will be scanned once only, but the centroids can be iteratively computed. Next, it can be used to cluster large data sets that do not fit in the main memory. It can be used to cluster large data sets that do not fit in the main memory. See, sometimes it happens that your data is too large. You might have heard about the word big data, and you already understand this thing that big data is today's concept, is a technological advancement where big data means a very voluminous data which doesn't fit into your simple computers or laptops. It needs data centers to be stored. So just imagine if you want to apply some kind of k-means clustering over them. So you cannot do it on your main memory because main memory is not that much voluminous. So in that case, you need to apply your clustering algorithms in the storage part wherever your data is stored. So obviously your data is stored in some disk like thing, some kind of secondary storage. So obviously you are going to apply the clustering algorithms over that data. You need to implement it over that data, right? So this can be done here. Then we need to control the number of iteration. Number of iteration should be controlled one. Why? Because at some moment of time we need to limit our iteration part, like let's say after 10 iteration, if you see not much differences, not much increment in the centroids, there is no much difference, then in that case you can stop your iterations. You can end up with the results whatever you have got because they are already refined ones. So if they are not improvising in every step, then there is no need of iterating again and again. And lastly, if I say that this version is not the best method, there are other algorithms that you can use. One of them is BIRCH, BIRCH, and probably I'm just going to tell you later on in the syllabus. However, it is very in-depth study. If you go into the clustering part of research, then only you can understand all these things. But however, if if the time allows, we'll just discuss this algorithm also. So this is the algorithm for disk version. You can see you need to choose the k data points as the initial centroids. Okay, then you have to repeat. You need to initialize from 0 to 1. And for every data point, you are going to find out the minimum distance, assign it to the particular cluster. And once the criteria is met, you need to stop the whole process. So this is the disk version that you can use, and this version is only meant when your data is voluminous in nature. It is too bulkier in nature that you cannot load it into the main memory. In that case, you can use the disk version. Now these are some of the strengths of k-means. It is very simple to understand and implement. It is efficient enough. It is taking a linear time, big O of TKN, where n is the number of data points, k is the number of cluster that we are using, and T stands for the iteration that we are doing. So in that case, it is very efficient. It is linear in nature. As you can see, it is big O of TKN. So it is a linear algorithm, right? Now, since both k and t are small, k-means is considered a linear algorithm. As I already told you, TKN we are taking. So here it is a linear algorithm. Now, it is most popular algorithm, as I already told you very many times. In very simple manner, you use k-means algorithm. So that is a simple algorithm. Then it terminates at a local optimum if SSE is used. The global optimum is hard to find due to complexity. Obviously, as I told you, that at some point of time, if you see no changes in your data, then only you can terminate the thing. So, going for the global optimum, going for more and more, best result, it will it will turn out into a complex procedure. So, avoiding those complex procedures, we can always end up with the local optimum whenever we want. Now, what are the weakness of k-means? The algorithm is only applicable if the mean is defined. Obviously, k-means means we need to define the mean from the centroid to the other data point. So until you find out the mean value is the statistics term that we use. So you always need to find out the mean between the centroid and the other data parts, right? The user need to specify k. This is again one important point, that when this is not a much this is not a much issue when you are dealing with just a limited version of the data, but it is considerable when you are working with the voluminous set of data. Like if you are working out with the big data, then it is very complex, and it is a bit tricky for the user to decide that how many cluster he or she should make. So this is one weakness, that it takes up a lot of energy of yours to decide on what minimum number you should take of k. Then the algorithm is sensitive to outliers. Outliers, I'm going to tell you later. What is outlier? You need to first of all understand what outlier means. So sometimes your data is fitting to the outlier, sometimes your data is overfitting to the outlier. So this is a different part that we need to understand. These are the things that you can see. So this is the whole summary of K-means algorithm, most popular algorithm. It is a clustering algorithm based on unsupervised learning. There's no clear evidence that any other clustering algorithm performs better in general, although there may be some more suitable for some specific type of data. I already told you that depending on the scenarios, depending on the problem conditions, you can implement different kind of algorithms over the data. But yes, K-means is considered efficient of all those data. Okay. Now, comparing different clustering algorithms is a difficult task, so no one knows the correct clusters. Okay, so this is the one point. So this was all about the clustering algorithm. Now I'm just going to share some MCQs with you. On the basis of today's learning, you people are going to identify the correct answers, and you need to think upon it. It will, sharpen your brains for exercising about all these concepts. You are going to think upon the concepts that we have seen, and on the basis of that, you are going to identify the correct answers of these 10 MCQs. So let me just share the MCQs with you. So here are the questions for you for MCQs. The topic is clustering. This is question number 1. The goal of clustering is to just quickly see to it and find the answers. I hope this is very easy for you to identify. If you have taken up my lecture very carefully and very seriously, you would be easily able to identify the correct answers of this. Then clustering is it a supervised learning algorithm? Is it unsupervised? Is it reinforcement, or it doesn't belong to any of the above categories? Very easy. Now see the next set of questions. Question number 3, 4. We have recently discussed local optima, so on the basis of that you can identify. Then the fourth one says, which version of clustering algorithm is most sensitive to outliers? So you can identify which is most suitable. Then the next set of questions. Fifth question is, which of the following is a bad characteristic of a data set for cluster analysis? Next says, for clustering, we do not require labeled, unlabeled, numerical data, categorical data. So you already know which kind of inputs it require. Now, this is the set of next question. Which of the following is an application of clustering? Market trend prediction, top modeling, biological network analysis, or all of them are suitable for this clustering part. So clustering analysis can be done on text data, multimedia data, time series data, whatever you have, you can identify. Then the last set of two questions: Netflix movie recommendation system uses unsupervised, supervised, reinforcement, whatever. And the final output of hierarchical clustering is. So I think all these questions you people might be able to answer because they are not much complex and they are totally based on the today's topic, on today's learning, that whatever we have gained. So I just suggest you that you please go through this clustering part and just go through the k-means algorithm, see some of its examples on the online resources that are available. And if you find any kind of queries or doubts you have, you can please ask them in my very next lecture. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.